I thought this trip would save us. A week in a luxury resort, away from work, stress, and the dull routines of marriage. I planned everything: sunsets on the beach, candlelit dinners, and nights where we'd rediscover each other. But instead, she found someone else. And she didn't even bother to hide it. She did it in the room right next to ours. I should have seen the signs, the late-night texts, the sudden coldness, the way she looked past me instead of at me. But I wanted to believe this trip was a fresh start. That is, until I heard the sounds through the thin hotel walls. Moans that weren't meant for me. That was the moment everything inside me shattered. And that's where my story begins. I don't remember when we started to drift apart. Maybe it was a slow process. Like a boat coming loose from its dock, the distance growing so gradually that you don't even notice until you're lost at sea. Or maybe it was fast, like a severed rope snapping under pressure, sudden and irreversible. What I do know is that I wasn't ready to let go. The idea for the trip came to me one night while lying in bed next to Lisa. She was turned away, her back to me, her breathing soft and distant. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each inhale and exhale, feeling the space between us stretch wider with each moment of silence. We used to talk before bed. We used to laugh. We used to touch. Now, she fell asleep facing the opposite direction, clutching her phone like a lifeline. So I decided to do something about it. A luxury beach resort, something we hadn't done since our honeymoon. A week of just us, no distractions. We would drink cocktails on the sand, watch the sunset, and maybe, just maybe, find our way back to each other. When I told her, she smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile that reached her eyes. I should have known then. Looking back, I can see all the moments I should have questioned. The nights she stayed late at work. The way she guarded her phone like it held national secrets. The sudden effort she put into her appearance. New dresses, new lingerie, new perfume, but somehow, never for me. I convinced myself I was overthinking. We had been married for 8 years. Of course, things weren't as exciting as they once were. Maybe she was just going through something. Maybe I was. Maybe I just needed to remind her of us. So, I packed our bags, booked the flights, and told myself that this was the solution. That love, when given the right setting, could be rekindled. From the outside, everything looked perfect. The white sand beaches stretched endlessly, the sound of waves lapping gently against the shore. The resort was a paradise of luxury, ocean view suites, infinity pools, and candlelit dinners on the deck. We checked in, and Lisa seemed happy. Or at least, happier than she had been in months. She kissed my cheek when I handed her the key card. She squeezed my hand as we walked through the grand lobby. For the first time in forever, I felt hope. That night, we had dinner on the beach. A private table, soft music playing, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. I poured us wine, and we talked, not just about work or schedules, but about memories. The way we used to. For a moment, it felt like we were us again. I held on to that feeling like a drowning man clutching at driftwood. But something changed after that night. Lisa got distant again. She started disappearing for hours at a time, claiming she wanted to explore the resort. Or go for a swim alone. She spent more time at the bar, laughing with strangers, her eyes bright in a way they never were when she looked at me. One afternoon, I found her by the pool, talking to a man. Tall. Athletic. Too confident. She didn't see me at first. She was laughing, twirling her hair, touching his arm, little gestures, but ones I hadn't seen from her in a long time. When she finally noticed me, her smile faltered, but just for a second. Then she waved me over, casual, like I was just some guy and not her husband. "This is Jake," she said. "He's staying in the suite next to ours." Jake smiled at me, shaking my hand firmly. "Your wife was just telling me about your trip. Sounds like a great getaway." I nodded, but something felt off. Maybe it was the way Lisa looked at him. Maybe it was the way he looked at her. Or maybe it was just paranoia. After all, I had planned this trip to fix things. not to create problems where there were none. So I smiled. I made small talk. I ignored the nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Because I wanted to believe that this was still our fresh start. I wanted to believe she was still mine. But belief doesn't change reality. And soon I'd be faced with the truth. I woke up to the sound of muffled laughter. At first, I thought I was dreaming. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the digital clock on the nightstand. 2:37 a.m. Lisa wasn't beside me. The sheets were cool where her body should have been. I listened, my breath shallow, my mind sluggish from sleep. Then I heard it again. A hushed giggle. A man's voice, low and smooth. It was coming from the room next door. For a few seconds, I just lay there, my heart knocking against my ribs, my body frozen in place. The walls of the resort weren't thick enough to drown out sounds entirely, but they were enough to blur them. Enough to leave room for doubt. Maybe it was just another couple. Maybe Lisa had gone to the bathroom. Maybe. Then I heard it. A moan. Not just any moan. Her moan. The sound I knew better than my own name. The kind of sound she hadn't made for me in months. Something cold slithered through my veins. I sat up, swinging my legs over the edge of the bed, my bare feet pressing into the plush carpet. My pulse pounded in my ears. The room felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in. I told myself I was imagining things. That the stress of the past few months was making me paranoid. That the thought, the insane, impossible thought, was just that. A thought. But then the bed frame hit the wall. Rhythmic. Unmistakable. And then I heard his voice. "Fuck, you feel so good." The room tilted. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I might throw up. Every rational thought vanished, burned away in the fire of realization. Lisa wasn't in the bathroom. Lisa wasn't out for a walk. Lisa was next door. With him. With Jake. I shot to my feet. The air felt too thick, my lungs straining to pull in oxygen. My hands curled into fists at my sides. I moved to the door, not even thinking, just acting, my body on autopilot. Every cell in my body screamed at me to do something, to stop it, to break down the door and rip them apart. But I didn't. I stood there, hand hovering over the doorknob, breathing like I had just run a marathon. My mind was an explosion of chaos, but underneath it all, one thought slashed through the noise. You need to be sure. Because once I crossed that line, once I confronted her, us, there was no going back. So I moved away from my door and into the hallway. The corridor was empty, silent except for the faint hum of the central air. I stopped in front of their door. Room 302. It was cracked open. Just an inch. Just enough. I didn't think. I just pushed. The door swung open, and the world ended. Lisa was on the bed, her back arched, her hands gripping the sheets, her face twisted in pleasure. Jake was above her, moving, fucking her, his hands on her body, his mouth on her skin. I saw everything. Everything. For a split second, the universe seemed to pause, like the air had been sucked out of the room. Then Lisa's eyes flicked open. They locked onto mine. Her expression twisted, first into shock, then something else. Something worse. Guilt? No. Annoyance. Shit, she breathed, shoving Jake off her. But it was too late. I had seen enough. Jake turned, his face flushed, breathless, looking at me like I was the intruder. "What the fuck, man?" I stared at him, then at Lisa. She scrambled for the sheets, yanking them up to cover herself, but the damage was already done. Her body, the one I had kissed, touched, worshipped, was still tangled with him. I felt like I was watching from outside my own body. Like none of this could actually be real. "Ryan," Lisa started, but I held up a hand. She closed her mouth. A strange calm settled over me. It wasn't peace, it was something darker, something colder. I turned to Jake, who was still sitting there, half naked, not even bothering to look ashamed. "Get the fuck out," I said. Jake hesitated, then scoffed, grabbing his pants from the floor. Whatever, man. She's not your property. I clenched my fists. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to hit him, to break his fucking face. But he wasn't the one I wanted answers from. He wasn't the one who had vowed to love me forever. I waited until he was gone. Until the door clicked shut behind him. Then I turned to Lisa. She had the audacity to look annoyed. Like I was ruining her night. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I didn't even know where to begin. She sighed, running a hand through her hair, still damp with sweat. Okay, she said, like we were about to have a casual conversation. Look, I know what this looks like. I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Do you? Lisa sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. Her wedding ring glinted under the dim light. A cruel joke. This doesn't change anything, she said, as if that was supposed to make it better. My jaw tightened. My whole body felt like it was on fire. Doesn't change anything? She exhaled sharply, like I was being unreasonable. Ryan, you were the one who wanted this trip. You wanted to pretend everything was fine. But it wasn't. And it isn't. I stared at her, the words hitting me like a slap. So this is my fault? I didn't say that. But that's what you meant. Lisa groaned, dragging a hand down her face. I don't know what you want me to say. I wanted her to say it was a mistake. That she regretted it. That she was sorry. But she wasn't. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't begging for forgiveness. She was just done pretending. And maybe, deep down, I had known for a long time that this moment was coming. I just never thought she'd be so cruel about it. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. I gave you everything. Lisa didn't respond. Because she didn't care. Because I was nothing more than an inconvenience. And that's when I knew. I wasn't going to forgive her. I stood there, staring at her, waiting for something, anything, that resembled guilt. Regret. Fear. But all I got was that same tired look. Like I was the problem. Like I was an idiot for reacting this way. Lisa didn't even bother covering herself properly. The sheet was barely clinging to her, her skin still flushed from what she had just done. What I had caught her doing. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was just annoyed. The silence between us stretched until it became unbearable. I felt it pressing against my chest, crushing the air from my lungs. Then she sighed, rolling her eyes like a petulant child. Ryan, it's late. Let's just... No. My voice came out sharper than I intended. You don't get to brush this off. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't argue. I could see it, the calculation in her eyes. She was figuring out what to say, how to spin this. I wasn't interested in her excuses. I took a slow step forward, my body vibrating with restrained fury. Tell me the truth. Lisa blinked. What? The truth. My voice was steady, but inside, I was unraveling. How long? She exhaled heavily, rubbing her temples. Does it matter? That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I moved so fast she flinched. Not because I was going to hurt her. I'd never. But because she finally realized how much she had fucked up. Does it matter? I repeated, my voice hollow. Are you fucking serious? Lisa rolled her shoulders like this was just another argument. Ryan, I don't know what you want me to say. Do you want me to lie and tell you it just happened? That it was a mistake? She laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Would that make you feel better? My stomach churned. So it wasn't a mistake. She hesitated. Then, in a quiet voice, no. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to stop the room from spinning. You didn't even hesitate. Jesus Christ. Lisa crossed her arms, the sheets slipping lower. Because I'm tired of lying to you. The fucking audacity. I barked out a laugh, shaking my head. Tired of lying to me? You've been fucking another man, Lisa. I gestured toward the bed, where the sheets were still tangled, where they had just been together. You were lying to me 5 minutes ago. Lisa licked her lips, her jaw tightening. You want the truth? Fine. I've been sleeping with Jake for the past 4 months. The words hit me harder than I expected, even though I had already suspected it. 4 months. While I was at work. While I was making dinner. While I was lying in bed next to her, thinking we were just going through a rough patch. Lisa kept going, her voice emotionless. It wasn't planned. It just happened. It just happened. I let out a bitter laugh. What, you tripped and fell onto his dick? Her eyes flashed with irritation. It's not like that. Then tell me what it's like. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't have an answer. Or maybe she just didn't want to give me one. A lump formed in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I wouldn't break in front of her. Not when she had already taken everything else from me. I took a shaky breath. Did you ever plan on telling me? Lisa hesitated. Then, with complete honesty. No. I stared at her, something sharp lodging itself in my chest. Why? Because I knew you'd react like this. Like this. Like I was the irrational one. Like I was overreacting to something insignificant. I ran a hand through my hair, my fingers shaking. You don't even care, do you? Lisa's mouth pressed into a thin line. I don't know what you want me to say, Ryan. I want you to feel something. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. I want you to look at me and realize what you've done. Lisa's expression softened just a little, and for a second, I thought maybe, she finally understood. Then she said, We haven't been happy for a long time. I went still. We barely talk anymore. She continued. We go through the motions. I wanted more. I let out a slow breath, my entire body shaking. Then why didn't you just leave me? She didn't answer. And I realized the truth. She wanted both. She wanted me, the stability, the security, the comfortable marriage. But she also wanted him, the excitement, the thrill, the newness. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. You're a fucking coward. Lisa's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? You heard me. My voice was eerily calm, even though I felt like I was seconds away from collapsing. You didn't cheat because we were unhappy. You cheated because you're selfish. Lisa scoffed. And you're perfect, right? I flinched. Not because she was right, because she was reaching. Trying to find any excuse, any way to shift the blame. I was loyal to you. I said, my voice low. I loved you. I planned this trip to save us, Lisa. And you fucked him in the room next door. She had the nerve to look guilty. But not guilty enough. I took a step back, feeling the weight of it all. The betrayal. The exhaustion. The finality. Lisa watched me carefully. What now? I let out a breath. What now? I repeated. Now I leave. Her eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't expected that. Like she thought I would yell, cry, maybe even beg her to choose me over him. I wouldn't. I was done. Lisa opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Good. I turned without another word. She didn't stop me. Because she had already made her choice. And now, I was making mine. I don't remember leaving the room. I don't remember walking down the hallway, past the endless rows of identical doors, past the soft glow of wall sconces that felt too warm, too peaceful, for what had just happened. What I do remember is the air outside. How it hit me all at once, thick, humid, suffocating. I remember the way my chest ached, the way my legs felt unsteady, like I had been punched in the gut but was still too numb to feel the full impact. I kept walking. Not toward the lobby, not toward the exit. Just away. The resort stretched out in front of me in golden-lit pathways, the palm trees swaying lazily in the night breeze, the sound of waves crashing against the shore. Somewhere in the distance, people were still awake, still drinking, still laughing. Life was going on. My life, on the other hand, had just collapsed. I reached the beach without even realizing it. The sand was cool beneath my feet. The ocean stretched out before me, dark and endless, mirroring the hollow pit in my stomach. And that's when it hit me. She's gone. Not physically. Lisa was still in that room, probably still sitting in that bed, probably not even thinking about me. But in every way that mattered, she was gone. She hadn't been mine for a long time. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The betrayal had already happened. The damage was already done. But what hurt the most was the way she had done it. Not just the cheating itself. Not just the lies. It was the lack of remorse. The sheer indifference on her face when I had caught her. The way she had let me walk away without so much as a second thought. I clenched my fists, staring out at the water, trying to feel something other than this crushing emptiness. Anger. I needed to feel anger. I needed to hate her. I needed to hate Jake, that smug, arrogant bastard who probably thought this was all a game. Who would wake up tomorrow without a second thought about the man whose life he had just helped destroy. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to go back, pound on his door, drag him out by his throat and make him regret ever touching her. I wanted to scream at Lisa, to make her see what she had done, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she had just put me through. But I didn't. Because the truth was, none of it would change anything. Lisa had made her choice. And I had made mine. I wasn't going to waste another second of my life chasing after someone who had already checked out. I let out a slow breath, closing my eyes for a moment, trying to center myself. Trying to accept it. Then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed in my pocket. For a second I hoped, it was her. That maybe, just maybe, she had realized what she had done. That maybe she was calling to say she was sorry. But it wasn't Lisa. It was a text from Mark. Mark, yo, you good? I stared at the screen, my pulse ticking in my jaw. Mark was my best friend. He had been my best man at the wedding. He had known Lisa almost as long as I had. And suddenly, I had the horrible, sinking feeling that he already knew. My fingers hovered over the screen before I finally typed. Me, no. I hesitated. Then, before I could stop myself, I added. Me, she cheated on me. Not even 10 seconds later, my phone lit up with an incoming call. I answered. Tell me you're joking. Mark said immediately, his voice sharp, cutting through the sound of the waves. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. I wish I was. Silence. Then, a curse under his breath. What the fuck? I swallowed hard, staring out at the ocean, my grip tightening around my phone. I caught her. With him. Mark's voice darkened. Who? Some asshole named Jake. Met him at the pool earlier. They've been fucking for 4 months. Mark let out a long breath, and I could tell he was trying to rein in his own anger. I swear to God, Ryan, if I was there right now. Yeah. My voice was flat. I know. Another pause. Then softer. What are you going to do? I almost laughed. What was there to do? Leave, I said simply. There's nothing left for me here. Another long silence. I could hear Mark shifting on the other end of the line, like he was debating whether or not to say something. Then, finally, Ryan, I need to tell you something. I frowned. What? He hesitated. And suddenly, I knew. The way he had paused. The way his voice had changed. I knew before he even said it. Lisa didn't just cheat on you, man. Mark exhaled, like he had been holding it in for too long. She's been doing this for a while. With other guys. I stopped breathing. The world tilted, just slightly. What? My voice was barely above a whisper. Mark hesitated again, but then he pushed forward. I didn't know for sure, man. I had my suspicions, the way she acted, some of the shit I heard through mutual friends. But I didn't have proof. And Ryan, I didn't know how to tell you. I swayed slightly, my legs suddenly unsteady. This wasn't just about Jake. This wasn't just one affair. Lisa had been doing this for years. And the worst part? I had never even seen it. I clenched my jaw, something inside me cracking open, Something raw and ugly and painful. Why didn't you tell me? Mark sighed, guilt lacing his voice. Because I didn't want to be wrong. And because, man, I knew how much you loved her. A bitter taste filled my mouth. Loved. Past tense. He was right. I had loved her. I had given her everything. And she had been betraying me from the very start. I closed my eyes, forcing down the wave of nausea threatening to rise. Then, in a voice that didn't even sound like my own, I said, I'm done. And this time, I meant it. I sat in the airport lounge, staring at my untouched drink. The ice had melted, watering down whatever the hell I had ordered, not that it mattered. I wasn't here to drink. I was here to leave. I had packed my bags in under 10 minutes. I hadn't said a word to Lisa. I hadn't even looked at her. I had just grabbed my things and walked out, leaving behind whatever life we had built together. Or rather, the illusion of it. Because that's all it had been, hadn't it? A lie. A carefully constructed facade that I had bought into while she was out there doing whatever the fuck she wanted. The realization should have crushed me. Should have left me broken beyond repair. But all I felt now was emptiness. No more shock. No more rage. Just a dull, hollow void where my marriage used to be. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand over my face. My flight wasn't for another hour, but I had gotten here early, just to get away. Just to put as much distance between myself and that resort as possible. My phone buzzed on the table. I didn't have to check it to know who it was. Lisa. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, watching her name light up. A week ago, I would have answered immediately. A week ago, my heart would have jumped at the sight of her name, at the thought of hearing her voice. Now, I let it ring. She called again. And again. And when that didn't work, the messages started coming in. Lisa, Ryan, please. Just talk to me. Lisa, you're really just going to leave like this? Lisa, can you at least tell me where you are? I clenched my jaw, my fingers twitching. I shouldn't respond. I shouldn't. But I was weak. Just one reply. Just to see what she wanted. Me, what do you want, Lisa? The dots appeared almost immediately. Lisa, I need to talk to you. Please. Lisa, just meet me one last time. I stared at the words, waiting for some kind of emotion to hit me. Some kind of pull. But there was nothing. She didn't get to ask for anything. Not after what she had done. Not after she had destroyed us. Me, no. Me, we're done. A long pause. Then, Lisa, so that's it? You're just giving up on us? I laughed under my breath. The fucking audacity. I didn't even bother responding. I just turned my phone off and shoved it in my pocket, letting the silence settle over me. Because, yeah, that was it. I wasn't giving up on anything. Lisa had already thrown it all away. And now, I was just finally walking away from the wreckage. It's been 6 months. 6 months since I walked away. 6 months since I left Lisa in that hotel room, since I boarded a plane without looking back. 6 months since I finally saw the truth, the real truth, of who she was. The first few weeks were the hardest. Not because I missed her. I didn't. Not really. I missed the idea of her. The version of her that I had built up in my head, the one I thought I had married. But that person had never really existed. The hardest part was rewiring my brain. Waking up in the morning and not instinctively reaching for my phone to text her. Coming home after work to an empty apartment, adjusting to the silence. Unlearning the habits of a man who had once believed he had a wife who loved him. But day by day, it got easier. I moved out of our place almost immediately. Sold the apartment. Got my own space. A fresh start. Lisa tried to reach out a few times. At first, it was just messages, long-winded explanations, half-assed apologies. Then came the phone calls. I just want to talk. Please. Can we at least get closure? Bullshit. I ignored every single one. Because I didn't need closure. I already had it the moment I caught her with him. The moment I saw the look on her face, the sheer lack of guilt, the way she had no regret. That was all the closure I needed. Eventually, she gave up. And now? I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I've been living again. Rebuilding. Finding pieces of myself that I hadn't even realized I had lost. And the craziest part? I'm happier now than I ever was with her. Because for the first time in years, I'm free. Leave a comment with your thoughts on the story. And subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new interesting stories. See you soon.